All right, good to see everybody. What is going on? Just let me connect the microphone here for a minute. All right, everybody, it is May 20th, 2023. We are back in New York City. We are back. Apologize, we've been MIA for the last couple days. I had a couple things come up, a couple work obligations come up. And then I had to fly back to New York, obviously. Had some events to attend yesterday. Today I didn't think I was going to be able to do a live stream because it was so rainy today. It was like raining all day. And it's kind of cold. But the rain finally stopped, so we are back. Now, what I think I want to do today, it's going to be a short live stream because I have something to do very early in the morning tomorrow. So being that it's Saturday, it's usually the day that we take off. We don't have too many topics as it relates to the financial markets, but I do want to briefly touch on the debt ceiling a little bit. I was on an interesting Twitter Spaces today with some very prominent people, both in the financial sphere, right? So some big fund managers, some big investment bankers, but also some very prominent political figures and voices as well. Now, I'll give you guys my take on the whole debt ceiling. I think, in my view, and look, I could be wrong, but I think the market, well, I shouldn't say the market, let me say the media, I think, is a little bit overblowing the situation, but it does make for some good content, right? In my view, it's sort of the same thing every time, right? This is nothing new in terms of the debt ceiling. It's usually just the Democrats pointing fingers at the Republicans pointing fingers at the Democrats, saying that they're ruining the country, they're spending too much, and then the Republicans saying, we need to reduce our spending. And I think both sides make some good points, but at the end of the day, I think if we're being really honest with ourselves, guys, just between us and the chat here, the spending is not going to stop, okay? It's just not going to happen. So in my view, my take on it, I think it's sort of a non-issue, right? It's probably going to be just like last time where everybody bickers and fights and sort of calls each other names until the final hour, right, where they need to make the decision, and then they'll probably just raise the ceiling, raise the limits, and then we'll just spend like crazy as we always do. Right, under both Republicans and Democrats, we've spent like crazy, so I'm not trying to, throw shade at one side or the other, but I don't know. The market doesn't seem to be pricing in a default. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll just say hello to everybody in the chat, but maybe we'll discuss briefly what would happen if we were to not raise the debt ceiling and default on our debt obligations. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit, but it's good to see everybody. Good to be back. We are here at Central Park South, 59th Street. Now, this building that we are standing adjacent from is actually the very famous New York Athletic Club. Now, you can't see this building behind it, but that is 157. Also, the JW Marriott Essex House. Kind of hard to see. Visibility is a little low tonight because it's so cloudy. But Bree Graham's good to see you. Thank you for joining us. I see Joseph Hardaway says, "What's up, Tom?" Sam is here, says, "Finally catching you live. Appreciate it." Bianca M is here. Welcome, says hello. Flat Smack says, "Tom, it's a distraction from what is really going on." Potentially. I think potentially. I mean, maybe there's not. I don't know. I wouldn't go as far to say that there's some potential, malicious intent with all of the debt ceiling talk. I think it just makes for very eye-catching headlines, right? I mean, if you just go to Google right now or ChatGPT, I've been using ChatGPT as my default search engine, by the way, and if you just type in some stuff about the debt ceiling, every single article is negative, if you notice, right? Every single article is doom and gloom. The Republicans aren't budging. Chuck Schumer is not going to negotiate at all, and it's just like this death spiral scenario. But I don't know. I think it's just going to be the same thing as it always is. Somebody will cave, and we'll just raise the debt and spend a ton of money again. Hey, Julie M is here. What's up? So glad everybody is here and that you're here. Tom, been very depressed lately. Oh, that since you lost your job. Well, Julie, I understand what you're going through. I understand what you are feeling right now. But I think it's very important to keep optimistic, right? Just keep on getting those job applications out there, and I promise you, something is definitely going to hit. I think we've all been through it. Wayne McKay says, Tom, the debt ceiling equals much ado about nothing. Now, maybe and maybe not. We'll talk about it tonight. I'm in the camp where it's probably going to be a non-issue, but we'll explore both ideas. I'm not sure if there was a really big Twitter space on it today. I think there was like 30,000 people that attended the space, and there was some really interesting things that were being said that I never really thought of before. But I don't know. I just really don't, if we really think about it, okay, we're not going to stop spending money. It's not like just out of the blue we're going to start to be super fiscally conservative and fiscally responsible. I think it's almost gotten to the point in the United States where, and we've talked about this before, I'm really under the belief that not only on the fiscal side, but on the monetary policy side of the house, we've inflated such a massive debt bubble, right? And we're sort of talking about two different things, but I think they all intertwine. This is the JW Marriott Essex House, by the way. But I think we've inflated such a monster debt bubble that it's almost impossible to let it deflate. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me just give you a quick shot of the Essex House. Now, what I mean by that is we live in a system that fundamentally only works with the issuance of new debt in perpetuity forever, or the system essentially doesn't work anymore. It stops. Bill Ackman has talked about this. Paul Tudor Jones has talked about this. Most recently, Carl Icahn has sort of talked about this as well. Although he did lose a ton of money. I'm not sure if you guys have been following. We haven't been doing these live streams on a consistent basis, but Carl Icahn took a big bath on his short position. He was really short the S&P 500. I think he lost several $1 billion on that bet. But that was essentially one of his main premise, one of his main thesis, right, is that the United States is a little bit past its prime. They're spending way too much money, more money than they take in. But I think if you want to maybe understand a little bit better, like, what is the other alternative to the United States, right? If you look at our financials, if you look at all of the horrible things that are going on here, right, which I think it's appropriate to acknowledge that, it's 10 times worse everywhere else. It's not like the United States is the only country, right, that spends too much money, that prints too much money, right? Look at Japan with the BOJ. They have negative interest rates, massive declining population, and that is a recipe for disaster in terms of GDP growth. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But at the end of the day, if you saw the Twitter post I made the other day, I think it's actually going to be a net positive if you look at things like migration trends, if you look at birth rates. I think that's all going to benefit the United States, Mexico, and Canada a lot. Hey, Day's Work is here. Welcome. Steve Ciaris is sending another $375 million to Ukraine. DC doesn't seem broke. Yeah, I mean, I think all of that is, and it's not only sending money to Ukraine, right? I think it's just more broadly the military industrial complex at work, but I don't know if we could talk about that too much. We may get banned from YouTube. Hey, RL says, do I need to re-sign up for the newsletter under Substack? You do not. You do not. I've been really lackadaisical on that because I had to put my focus on a big venture and something I'll announce soon here. But that's going to be on the back burner for now, probably for another 2 weeks if all goes well. I just needed to sort of deprioritize a few things in my life to focus on a really amazing opportunity that I need to close here, if that makes sense. But we'll talk more about that hopefully sooner rather than later. But yeah, the newsletter is definitely 100% still on. It is just on a hiatus. I've had to deprioritize a few things in my life. Hopefully you guys understand that. Guys, this is 6th Avenue. This is one of my favorite intersections in all New York City. Central Park South, all the way in the distance you have the Deutsche Bank towers. Looks really really beautiful, but also it kind of sucks, guys. I mean, think about it. It's May 20th. It's almost June. I mean, can you guys even freaking believe that? It's almost June and it's still a little bit cold in New York, right? It's 64 degrees tonight and it's rainy. But good news, tomorrow's going to be 74. It's supposed to be a beautiful Sunday in the city. Jason Watt is here. Says, good evening, Tom. What's up? I see my friend Tyree. Hey, Gigi NYC. Thank you for joining us. We missed you here, so thank you for joining. Betos is weapons marketing. Yeah. Carol Reevy is here. D. Triple G says, fellow members of the chat, the debt ceiling is currently well over $30 trillion. The increments have been in increments of 2 billion plus each time. This is Triple G. Mr. Cold says, Tom, are you a bottle cap collector? I'm not. Interesting question there, though. I'm not. The only thing I do collect is I collect specific newspaper headlines. So since it's Saturday night, we're going to go off the rails here a little bit. I'll tell you guys some cool pieces that I own. I have the original Wall Street Journal and the IBD headline. Or excuse me, the Wall Street Journal headline for the stock market crash in 1987. I have that. I saved it. It's in like mint condition. I bought it from a friend. Obviously, I'm not old enough to live through the 1987 crash. But I also have the 9/11, right? Headline. What else do I have? I have all of the COVID headlines. So every single major breaking COVID headline, I have all of them leading up till when the virus just first dropped. And I'm not saying dropped in like a facetious way. It's just I'm tired and I have no, can't really think of any other way to explain it. When the virus first came out, the new release. All right, I'll stop. Yeah, so I have all those New York Post articles, and the reason why I collect these guys is because you can almost use history titles as contrarian indicators, perhaps. And I think this was Paul Tudor Jones in an interview before the 1987 stock market crash, because Paul Tudor Jones, the way his claim to fame, I mean, his returns are fantastic, but he successfully predicted the stock market crash in 1987. But before that, he was doing an interview. I think the interview has been since taken down, perhaps. I think he tried to get it taken down, but some people have since re-uploaded it. I'm not sure. You could probably find it on YouTube. But anyway, he was talking about being a contrarian. And one of the things that he was really hammering on in the interview is you can use main news events. This is a really good shot at Billionaires Row here at Central Park Tower as a contrarian indicator. So when you see these huge, eye-catching, eye-grabbing headlines in the news, printed in newspapers, they tend to be negative, right? And throughout history, if you look at that, those have been historically really good times to buy. When you're so petrified and you're so scared, that you're like, the world has to end. I'm going to sell all my stocks. I'm going to, blow out of all my positions. Generally speaking, that tends to be areas of opportunity. So I always try to collect those really scary, eye-catching headlines, just because, in 20 years when I look back on it, chances are, right, if you're talking about the S&P 500, the major equity indices in the US, those are probably really good buying opportunities. Now, I'm not saying all the time, but most times. Hey, Dan Zhang says it's a documentary on how he trades. He bought the right after it was released. You could still Google it. Dan, you're correct. And you know what, Dan, I was going to mention your name because I think we talked about this before. I feel like I'm having a deja vu moment. But yeah, I think it was you who said he bought the rights to it because he didn't want anybody to see it. But I think it's still up. And it doesn't have that many views. That's the weird thing. I think it only has like, maybe 300,000 views, which in the grand scheme of things, for the value of that interview, that's a very, very low amount of views for that. I don't know, maybe somebody could find it and drop it in the chat. Here we are at 57th Street. This is the Steinway Tower. Now this tower is so tall that you can't even see the top of it. Because I would say maybe the top 30 floors get extremely, extremely skinny at the top. And it's so cloudy you can't even see probably the last third of the building. So imagine owning an apartment or having a unit in that particular building. On nights like tonight, it's literally like living in the clouds. It's almost like you're looking out your window. It's like you're in an airplane or something. It's kind of crazy. Hey, music is here. It says, love your walks and talks. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Well, even though it's a little bit of a dreary and rainy night, I think the city kind of looks unique in the rain, though. You know what I mean? Notice, I think that's all the lights reflect really. Let me catch up on some of the chats. Hey, Mars Tech, what's up, dude? Good to see you. Buffering a little bit. Yeah, usually buffers. Let me see. I noticed anytime it rains in the city, we have more buffering issues. I don't know why. Hopefully it's back now. Now, I guess we'll just cut right to the chase and ask the question now. If you guys had to put a probability, right, in percentage form, we'll just keep it simple here, that we do not come to a resolution, okay, on the debt ceiling, what do you guys think that percentage would be? And this is 432 Park Avenue behind Trump Tower. Do you think it's 50% we don't come to a resolution to the debt ceiling? Do you think it's 100% that we don't? You think that we're just going to have this Armageddon moment where we don't raise the debt limit and we default on our obligations perhaps, or have to cut back on certain benefits like Social Security? What do you guys think? Wow, a mixed. I wasn't expecting that. Evan Weeks says 80% the GOP needs a disaster to pin on Biden. Interesting. So Evan, you think it's going to be an 80% probability that we do not find a resolution to this? Wow. Richard Vogel says 50%. Strider says 0%. The politicians won't crash their investment portfolios. That's a really good point. That's a really good point, because you have to understand, in my view, well, I'll hold off that thought for a moment. I want to read some more of the chats. Mr. says we'll probably default. I don't think so, but it's good to have a lot of different opinions. NU91 says, I think they'll delay it till the fall if they can't agree. You know, from the chat, hey, Gary Carpenter, what's up, man? Harry Connors says 80%, Mr. Colt says 63%. You know, from the comments, I'm very, very surprised that so many people think we're gonna run into a big problem here. Maybe you guys are right. Maybe you guys are right. Hey, Kathleen says, Tom, 2% politicians want to be reelected. That's a good point, too. Steve CR says, need to default and restructure on debt. Kevin Buffalo says, Tom, stop paying the administration and Congress until they compromise. Why do we pay people for not doing their jobs? That's actually a really good point there. Hey, Marcelo Gill says, hey Tom, I'm here back after a long absence. Things are pretty hectic here in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Anyway, I'll hit the like button for you. Thank you so much. We're actually about to pass UBS. Marcelo loves that particular building. So I'll give you guys my take. First of all, okay, since we've had so many people in the chat predict that there's a very high probability that we do not come to a resolution here and something bad happens. I think in that instance it would be very cataclysmic for the market. I think that would be sort of like a black swan event. Or I should say the magnitude of it perhaps. Because this is going to be a little bit of a funky comparison. But we have talked about the Silicon Valley banking collapse almost to the point of ad nauseum. And that led us into a conversation about fractional reserve banking and fractional reserve lending. And we're not going to go into that whole conversation. I'll just sum it up in one sentence. And that the trust and faith in the system is exactly that. It's the trust and faith in the system. Without trust or faith in the system falls apart, right? Because it is a fiat currency system. So the way I can sort of describe that as it relates to this big problem, such as the raising of the debt ceiling or raising the debt limit, is that if we don't, and we, God forbid, default on our bond obligations, right, our debt obligations to other countries, that is going to send massive shockwaves through the bond market, and you may see a rapid sell-off in the debt market where you have yields literally going to the moon. I mean, this could be like really breathtaking moves here. And we've sort of talked about that scenario before. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. But if it comes to the point where we don't compromise on this and we default on our obligations to bondholders, that's going to send a pretty clear message to the rest of the world that the United States isn't a surefire bet anymore, right? So we've been talking about, why would I buy a piece of property in this environment when I could just buy a U.S. Treasury that's going to yield me close to 5%. At least that'll keep up with inflation with risk-free. Well, if we default on our obligations, that's not risk-free anymore. And we use this terminology, risk-free, because the U.S. has never defaulted on its debt obligations, right? So it's almost just like you're parking your money in a very safe vehicle where you'll get paid your yield on your money. But if that's not the case anymore, even if it's for a month and then we have some sort of a resolution, that is going to be a huge black mark on the country. And I think that would give our adversaries, right, such as China and the like, a big advantage and a big upper hand, which could potentially perpetuate fund flows, money flows to that part of the world. Again, I don't think this is going to happen, but if it does, that is a very bad scenario for the US. Like probably the worst scenario you could probably get. Hey, Dan says the 2009 issues is not resolved, the problems are catching up. That's a good point too. We use this terminology, to Dan's point, of kicking the can down the road, right? So the 2008 and 2009 financial crisis, as Dan points out, it was never really solved, was it? I mean, I think everybody would probably agree. Now, maybe some would disagree, but I think the vast majority of us would agree that we've never really found a solution to the problem. We've deployed massive amounts of quantitative easing, or QE, to kick the can down the road, right? And at some point, that is going to come home to roost, right? You sort of have to pay for kicking the can down the road. However, over the past decade, a lot of people, including myself, by the way, have been, I guess just for a lack of a better term, I'll say surprised and wrong as to how long the Federal Reserve could keep the, theoretical balls in the air, right? How long can you keep juggling these balls in the air without, tripping over yourself and letting all the balls fall to the ground? So I don't know. How long can we continue to perpetuate this crazy debt cycle? I don't know. I think that's the unknown. Mark says, Tom, the eternal optimist. Our government is corrupt. This must be fixed first. That's true. The government is corrupt. Government is very corrupt. But I think this goes back, and it's a good point, but it goes back to my point of this. And it's actually not that good of a point, by the way. It's sort of like a cope, if I'm being honest. It's what is the alternative, right? If you think that the U.S. government is corrupt, which it is, I'm not defending anybody. On both sides, by the way. I'm not just calling out the Democrats. I'm not just calling out the Republicans. It's corrupt on both sides. What about other countries? I mean, other countries, it's like that times 20. Hey, Jenny Trickett, what's up? So trading the market was crazy last week. We had a major gamma squeeze on the indices while the Dixie kept going up. It couldn't stop the squeeze. This is Jenny Trickett. Gerardo M is here. Says hello, Tom. Sabrina Fair, welcome. Yeah, Stephen Bates' corruption culture. Joel PM says politicians could short the top 30% of the S&P and then allow a default for a W. Yeah, I think if that happened, that would probably spark some type of civil overthrow, because that would just be such blatant in-your-face corruption. Yeah, that's funny though, man. Fernando says, what about inflation in Argentina? I think it's a big problem. I think inflation here in the US is a big problem too. And oftentimes, especially during the times where the CPI numbers come out, we tend to really hammer on it in the United States. And I could sort of lose focus sometimes to say, look, CPI is, what did this last CPI number come out at? 5%? In other parts of the world, inflation is over 90%, is literally 100%. So again, on a relative basis, it doesn't seem so bad, but it is. It is very bad. However, if we really want to get into the thick of it, I would argue that inflation, the true inflation is actually much higher than 5%. And I made a post about this on Twitter. Real quick, I want to show you guys. This is Rockefeller Center. Beautiful place. Now, I bet you anything they probably closed down the roller skating rink because literally was pouring raining all day. So let's see, I'm actually kind of curious if people are still roller skating. Probably not. It'd probably be way too slippery. And then we'll continue our inflation talk. Yeah, just as I suspected. Way too slippery. There was a really good Wall Street Journal article about this place. And essentially in New York City, we've been talking about commercial real estate for a long time here, the warnings of it. And Rockefeller Center is trying to do creative things to attract people, to attract tourists, to attract tenants back to their buildings, right? So we all know during the winter, right here is where they have the ice skating rink. Right behind me, actually literally where I'm standing, they have the famous Christmas tree. But after COVID, they started to put in this roller skating rink in the summer to attract people, to attract tourists, and attract tenants. Because you see this over here? This is all a part of Rockefeller Center, right above the Today Show. And this was an awesome article in the Wall Street Journal. I forget the Nightbot command that I programmed in here, but I think we talked about it before. We may have or we may not have.
I was thinking I'm going to see them.
This is all vacant, guys, if you can believe that. You see this above the Today Show? empty. And you can kind of see it too. I'm not sure how good it comes out on the live stream, but this building is completely empty, okay? So what they're doing is they're going to build luxury hotel. I think it's going to be about 134 rooms, maybe 143 or 134, I don't know. But you get the picture. They're going to build a luxurious hotel here in substitution for a lot of the office space, for a lot of commercial space, right? Because not many people are coming back to the office, and if they do come back to the office, they're only coming back 2 to 3 days a week, right? So as a lot of these buildings try to repurpose themselves, they're trying to repurpose it as a tourist attraction, and what better way to do that than make fun and creative things here. Now, usually during the summer, they have interesting art exhibits, they have fountains here, so we'll probably see that as we do these live streams over the summer, but yeah, I think that's just one of the things we need to watch, not only in New York, but in Boston, in Silicon Valley, in San Francisco, in parts of Texas, right? Some big cities in Texas like Austin. Vacancies are at their highest levels ever, right? And I think it's only going to get worse as, leases come to expiration and leases renew. I think a lot of companies are going to choose not to renew their leases. Sabrina Fair says, looks like a movie set. Richard Vogel is here, welcome. Hey, Hawaii, welcome. Thank you for being here. Dan Zhang says, Tom, do you agree with what Peter Schiff said, that getting inflation data from the government is like letting a student, I lost the comment, grading his own test? Yeah, I agree. Generally speaking, I agree, right? And Dan makes a good point. For those of you who don't know, Peter Schiff is a very famous economist. He is probably the biggest financial pessimist I've ever encountered. I love Peter Schiff. I love his show. I would actually recommend that everybody go subscribe to the Peter Schiff show, or the Peter Schiff podcast. He is pretty much the best pure play economist in terms of like Austrian economics, against this Keynesian modern monetary theory. But I agree with Peter Schiff, and this is what I'd say. I think it's more important, instead of just looking at the CPI numbers that we look at all the time, calculate your own CPI number. I think everybody in the chat should be, keeping an Excel spreadsheet. So what I do is I have an Excel spreadsheet and calculate your own rate of inflation. You could literally calculate your own personal CPI. And the way you do that is by tracking your expenses. You track what you paid in rent last year. You track what you paid for energy costs and expenses, and you track what you paid for food, and on and on and on and on. Airfare, you get the picture. And I can't speak for anybody else, but my personal inflation rate is right about 17% on a year-over-year basis. This is from 2020 to 2021. About 17%. That's massive, right? Now, what has sort of skewed those numbers, for me at least, was airfare. You guys know I travel back and forth between New York City and Miami, Florida. In 2020, you used to be able to get a flight from Fort Lauderdale to JFK, or from Miami to LaGuardia for like 50, 60 bucks. That's not happening anymore. Okay, sometimes I could pay, 210, 230 bucks. If I book in advance, it's right around maybe 150, 120. But the problem is, at least for me, with my schedule being so hectic, it's really difficult for me to book a flight more than 2 weeks in advance. So maybe the data for me is a little bit skewed there, but I can tell you, travel costs for me has absolutely skyrocketed. I don't know, I want to hear from you guys in the chat. Would you say that your CPI number, your personal inflation number, is above or below the actual number that we see on the CPI? Golden City says quantity and condition for personal inflation rate can mislead people. Dan says, I don't think the Fed is telling us the truth about our inflation. I think the real inflation rate in the US is currently near 11%. Hey, Tom Berry. What's up? Says Tom, I was in Caesars Palace, Las Vegas today, and I saw Peter Luger's Steakhouse is coming this fall. Really? Wow. Peter Luger's is coming to Las Vegas. That is insane. Now, Peter Luger's is great. I think there's some steakhouses in New York that are better, but Peter Luger's is a fantastic place. Rockefeller Center is absolutely gorgeous tonight, by the way. Line Sinks is inflation. You should see food prices here in the UK officially 21%, but some items for the CPI have been higher than 10%. Wow. Maid Ghost is way above. Hey, the Austin Tennis is when is Rockefeller Center not gorgeous? That's true. Austin Tennis, good to see you, sir. Thank you for joining us. These flowers are gorgeous here. Hey, JP, says Tom, I'm going to be in the city for the day during Memorial Day weekend. Any cool things to do in the spring? I would go to Central Park. I'd spend a lot of time there. I'd also spend a lot of time in Riverside Park. Those are probably my two favorite parks in the entire city. Hopefully the weather will be nice. Today was not good of a day in the city, let's just say that. Raining pretty much all day, but the good news is tomorrow weather should be better. It's going to be like 74 degrees and sunny, I hope. Now, it's crazy because, you know, when I left Miami, it's getting really hot in Miami now. For those of you who don't know, usually right around Memorial Day, you know, May 25th, around that area, that's when the heat gets really cranking in Miami, right, in southern Florida. So if you think about the stereotypical, you know, person who describes Florida, especially southern Florida, very hot, sticky, humid, it really tends to start now because our rainy season is approaching. So we've been having those, you know, late day, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, you know, rainstorms. It'll be 90 degrees and, you know, 80% humidity, which a lot of people don't like, but I actually do enjoy that, to be honest. I'm weird like that. I love it hot. I love it humid. So when I flew in to JFK, I left. It was 91 degrees in Miami. I land at JFK at like 11 o'clock at night, and it's 52 degrees and like misty rain. It felt like it was 20 degrees out. And of course, knowing me, I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt like an idiot. But hey, Golden Cities is how you doing, Tom? Glad you're back. Thank you so much. I'm glad I'm back too. You know, hopefully after next week, okay, please God, everything goes well. We're gonna really be back on our regular schedule, but I've just been so busy over the last really 2 months. I've been working on some interesting stuff, some really exciting things I've been working on. So hopefully all of that will come to a close next week, and we'll just be back like clockwork every night at 8:30. So hopefully we'll be back. Hey, Des says, well, it's always humid in Raleigh. I can't stand it. Justin S. says, was there any damage from any of the storms a few weeks ago in the Miami area? I'm not really too familiar with any storms a couple weeks ago. Do you mean our crazy 1 in 5,000 year rain event? If that's what you're talking about, then yes, but not near me. So that was mainly in Fort Lauderdale, right? I mean, we got a ton of rain too. It was insane. Like, I've honestly never seen that much rain in my entire life. And funny enough, I was actually supposed to be flying out of Fort Lauderdale that day. Obviously, flight got canceled because if you look at some of the videos online Fort Lauderdale Airport was not an airport. It was literally a swimming pool. There was like 2 feet of water on the tarmac there, and it took like 2 days to drain. Now Miami wasn't too bad. I didn't flood at all, thank God. But I'm sure in Fort Lauderdale there was probably millions of dollars worth of property damage. Now I went in this store today just to look around. They have some really nice stuff. I really like this briefcase right here. That one is really nice, really classic, really nice. Somebody says West Palm Beach had tornadoes. Wow. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, knock on wood, thank God, I haven't really been getting any of that in my area. You know, my power did randomly go out, though, last week, but I think that was a total separate issue. I don't think it was weather related. Somebody says, what street are we on? Well, we're coming up at 6th Avenue and 49th Street. We usually start to buffer right around here. So this is the Radio City Music Hall, Rockefeller Center sort of area right here. Right through these doors is the Tonight Show. Now we're going to cross, so we got 10 seconds. Fountain's looking beautiful tonight. Could actually feel it warming up. Since we didn't have enough, we're going to be going over building permits. So we got some building permit data out last week. So we're going to be talking about how we could use that as a little bit of a leading economic indicator. So stay tuned for that. But again, tonight's Saturday. It's going to be a short stream, so we'll just walk around, we'll hang out, check out the city. Hey, Paul says, how is the temperature, Tom? It's been unseasonably cold in Rhode Island last week. It's not so bad tonight, but it's like 60-ish, maybe 57. 60. Now somebody, I forget who put in the chat, that Peter Luger's is coming to Vegas. Peter Luger's is a great place. I think it's a little bit, I think you pay for the name now. Does that make sense? In my view, trying a lot of the steakhouses in New York City in general, I think Peter Luger's, although it is fantastic, I think you're really paying for the brand name. This place right here, Del Frisco's, I would argue it's, for the price, it's probably better, in my view, in my opinion. I know steaks can get very sensitive and touchy here, okay? But I think Del Frisco's is a better place, not gonna lie. This is an awesome shot of Radio City Music Hall. Yeah, Natalie, Del Frisco's, great place, love it. Joe, it's like it's 50 in Pittsburgh. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's unseasonably cold. I mean, think about it. It's almost Memorial Day, right? Next weekend is Memorial Day weekend. Look at that glimpse of the Empire State Building. You know, let's actually walk down to 34th Street because the Empire State Building looks unreal tonight. But I think we have to go this way and around because we're going to buffer like crazy. For some reason, there's a dead zone right outside of the News Corporation, Fox News. Hey, Billy is here. What's up, Billy? Dan Zhang says, Tom, I agree. I think Peter Luger's is overrated, just the name that brings attention. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad place, but I think as a brand gets so iconic, especially in the restaurant business, I feel like quality can, for the price, right? I think quality could slip a little bit. And there's so many good steakhouses in Manhattan that I think are cheaper than Peter Luger's in terms of affordability, and it's a lot better. in my view. Now, I forget, because we haven't really been on... you know what, everybody? It's graduation season. There's tons of college graduations. I was at a college graduation yesterday. That's why we couldn't do the live stream. I was at the commencement for St. John's University. Now, I think all of the graduate students and like the medical school stuff, like the PAs and the doctorates, graduated this weekend. I think next weekend is the undergrad for pretty much a lot of the colleges around here. So that is going to be very busy. You're probably going to see a huge influx of tourists into the city, so it'll be cool to see that. Hey, Kathy says, good evening from South Florida. I was just in South Florida, love it. Hey, Ryan Beck, what's up, man? Richard Vogel says, Tom, have I been to Sparks Steakhouse? I haven't, but that is on my list. Now, Sparks Steakhouse is right around the corner from Grand Central Station, right? And I believe that's where that big famous mob hit happened. Like a bunch of mobsters came in and shot up the place way back in the day. I think that's what it's famous for. I've never been, but I would definitely like to go. It's definitely on my list. Julie M says Sparks is the best, yeah. This is the Barclays Investment Bank, which actually used to be Lehman Brothers before its demise. Now, anyway, you know, we haven't been streaming on a regular schedule over the last, I don't know, month. So I'm not sure if we talked about this. Now, it's going to sound a little bit political, but I promise you it's not in a way. But we had two major, just for lack of a better term, I'll just use the word firing. I know that Tucker Carlson and Dom Lemon, I don't believe they technically got fired. I think their contracts are still in existence, and they're going to be paid their full amount of the contract just for not working. And there was a lot of uproar about this, right? There was a lot of outrage from both, the right and the left. Chances are, if you were on the left, you were, jumping up and down that Tucker Carlson got fired. Chances are a lot of people on the right were jumping up and down and, laughing that Dom Lemon got fired. But, sort of having an apolitical take on here and tying it into, the future of, business and potentially financial markets, I think this is probably the best thing that's ever happened to both of them. I just don't think they see it yet. Dom Lemon, regardless if you like him or not, and Tucker Carlson, regardless if you like him or not, have built such brands and such following and such an audience that, in my view and in my opinion, both of those individuals, again, regardless if you agree with them or not, were severely, severely underpaid in terms of just their equity in their brand, right? So the way I sort of tie this into the future of broadcast media and the future of, even investing in media is that with all of these platforms, right, especially YouTube, Twitter now even, I'm not sure if you guys saw the announcement, but for Twitter Blue subscribers, so I think if you're subscribed to Twitter Blue and you pay the $7 a month that everybody trolls you about, you're now allowed to upload 2 hours of long form content at 4K 60 frames a second on Twitter. I mean, think about that. So the barrier to entry, the point I'm trying to make is that the barrier to entry to building a brand or building an audience, and even journalism, right? You can have small investigative journalism that's probably going to blow up and sort of dethrone these big legacy media outlets and platforms. So when people were so outraged, right, and upset about this, I really don't think they see the bigger picture, the opportunity cost that they were giving up by being employed at CNN, by being employed at Fox News. Dom Lemon could easily, probably spend $10,000, set up a home studio, and Tucker Carlson could do the same thing. Set up a home studio and just do the reporting and the journalism themselves and make 10 times the amount of money with ease, because you cut out the middlemen. Instead of Fox News or CNN selling the advertising, they could just sell the advertising themselves and sell a subscription-based service to their subscribers, to their followers. And my prediction is I think that's going to be happening a lot more. So, Dom Lemon or Tucker Carlson, right? If you guys are watching this, which you're probably not, just being a little bit funny there. I think that's, the best thing that probably ever happened to them, because not only do they not have to work anymore, and they're getting paid out the rest of their contract, they can go do their own thing, and they'll probably make hundreds of millions of dollars. And over the course of their career, they may make $500 million to $1 billion. I would not be surprised at that at all. So if I was News Corporation, if I was CNN or really any of these big legacy media outlets, I would be really, really scared of the disruption from independent media and independent journalists that are popping up on YouTube, that are popping up on Twitter, that are popping up on Rumble, right? You name the platform. I think that's where things are going. I don't know, would you guys agree with that? Would you disagree with that? And again, sort of being apolitical, just sort of staying on the topic of where we see media going as a trend. I don't know, what are your thoughts there? Yeah, Steve CR says Tucker. Steve CR says, yeah, Tucker was getting paid $20 million. Yeah, so if I was a News Corporation shareholder, I would really be sort of thinking about that, right? I remain bullish Google, right? Long term, Google, YouTube. Yeah, Ryan Beck says what they're doing isn't working. I think this is just another example, right, in real time. And this is why, as an investor, it's so important to be a trend follower, right? If you're an investor, it's so important to pay attention to emerging trends. That's how you make the money. And I think that legacy media in and of itself is one of these industries that is really ripe for disruption and is kind of being disrupted right before our eyes. So. All right, let's catch up. Love is Kind says, notice how easy it is for literally anybody to start a podcast these days. Yeah, very true. Nina says, excellent comment, Tom. Many careers can be worked differently coming in the near future. It's what my plans and systems are working on. I would agree. Yeah, Ryan Beck says, look at Joe Rogan. That's another thing, right? And I think it's good news for a lot of people that are coming up, right? Because think about broadcast media like this. Generally speaking, if you wanted to be a big news anchor, right, or even just get a traditional job as an anchor in media or in business, you would have to go to college, get a journalism degree, probably go get your master's, do a couple rotations, get an internship. But now, in theory, you could just go direct to consumer. You could literally, be feet on the street. Let's say if, you're researching and doing some analysis on, the open drug trade in major cities. All you do is you take a pen and paper, right? And you maybe take some video and you talk to people on the street, you ask some questions, one thing leads to another. You have a major story and you could publish that yourself, right? People will watch it, you'll be surprised. So I think in that essence, right, since there's pretty much no startup cost, the competition for traditional legacy media is going to be really stiff, really stiff. Well, now we're in Times Square. I'm surprised that there's actually this many people here today, because it was pretty dead in the city where we just were. Now the red steps are completely empty, but maybe that's because they shut them down because it's so slippery up there. Who knows? Wow, Ryan Bex as well. Look at Pat McAfee. He was a punter in the NFL, hardly name recognition, 2 million YouTube followers and got a deal. Wow, $110 million deal with FanDuel. That's insanity. Hey, Dow Jones, what's up? Says peace, hope you're well. DowJones.eth, good to see you. Evan Weeks says Joe Rogan had name recognition before he started though. That's true, but I don't think he had like extreme name recognition, right? I knew Joe Rogan from Fear Factor, but not to the point where if I saw him on the street, I would have recognized him before the Joe Rogan experience, in my view, but it's a good point. All right, so we're gonna go down one more block and then we're gonna bang a left just to get out of the Times Square area. We'll go to 34th Street, Penn Station. Some people said, somebody said older people prefer legacy media. That's true. I mean, if you look at the demographics of, I think Fox News in particular, it's mostly anybody over the age of 45. But again, if you want to look at an emerging trend, you know, sort of go back to what Peter Lynch always used to say, look at what the kids are doing, look at what the kids are consuming. Now, I would bet that 80%, I'm going to say a good 80%, and that's being a little, I could even probably say 90%, but, you know, I'll give some leeway there. I think 80% of kids, you know, kids under the age of 20 get all of their news from either YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter. I would bet money on that because I find myself getting the majority of my news online, whether that's watching, you know, independent media on YouTube clips. Now, obviously, for the financial aspect, I have to read IBD, you know, Barron's and the Wall Street Journal, but the vast majority of people don't. I'll show you guys where they dropped the ball. Hey, SME Media, what's up? FredX is here. What's up, FredX? Thank you for joining. Justin S. is the technology disconnect between older generations and younger. Carlson is young enough to still understand how to use technology. Yeah, I mean, I you know, when I heard that news, and again, not to get too political, I was like, wow, those two, you know, are gonna do really, really well. You know, just go direct to consumer. They could do it. They have the audience. They have the resources. Okay, let's cross here because I kind of want to get out of Times Square. Not a big fan of it. Not a big fan. A quick rule of Times Square. If anybody says, excuse me, you definitely should not excuse yourself. You should just keep walking. All right, I think we found a hole here, to use a football terminology. And we'll go back over to 6th Avenue, and we'll head downtown. Joe says, ever walked the Village? A lot of times, 1,000 times. So I got another question for you guys. Many of you may have seen it, many of you may not have seen it. But I think the first I would say the first big podcast to upload on Twitter Blue, right? I think Elon Musk just announced the fact that you're allowed to upload 2 hours worth of video, right? 2 hours worth of long form content, up to 4K, 60 frames a second. I think the first one was the All In podcast. Everybody's heard of the All In podcast, right? With Chamath Palihapitiya. It's essentially a lot of Silicon Valley guys, a lot of Silicon Valley tech billionaires, right? Talking about the market, talking about the economy and the like. Now, I have a prediction, and I want to know if you guys agree, disagree. I think in 3 years' time, I was going to say 2 years, but let me give myself another year. I think in 3 years' time, the platform where people will be consuming the most podcast content will be Twitter. Agree with that, disagree with that, or indifferent? And the reason why I say that is because Elon Musk's vision for Twitter, right, regardless of if you agree with him, disagree with him, hate the guy or not, I guess that's not the point. But it's to sort of be a spitting image of a WeChat, essentially, like the app for apps of all apps. So expanding into payments, which is huge. I think somebody's getting out here. Sean Hayes and Goodnight Oscar. I've never heard of this, but I'm assuming it's very popular because there's a lot of people outside. Usually when the show ends, there'll be tons of people out waiting for the actors and the cast. I think that's a more appropriate term. Would that be a more appropriate term than actors? I think it's cast members, right, since we're talking about theater. Anyway, yeah, they'll come out and say hello to people. You know, who was the guy, and you guys could help me out with this, who was the guy that came out last year? Oh, it was Hugh Jackman, I remember. Yeah, it was Hugh Jackman. We saw him not too long ago, actually. I think it was like 8 months ago. Jenny Trickett says no. Vivian says Twitter can be a game changer with over 450 million active users. Twitter provides a powerful platform for discovery. I think there are a lot of bots on there, though. I've noticed it's gotten a little bit better, but Twitter has been a big problem for bots. Macros fan says Twitter rocks these days. Citizen journalism for the win. Yeah, I think I'm most bullish on the prospect of long-form content on Twitter. I think that's what I'm most excited about. Hey, Jack S. says, I disagree. Spotify, Rumble, etc. pay huge dollars to get podcasts exclusively. Twitter doesn't have the money to offer contracts like that. That's actually a really good point. That's a really good point to counter my point. That is a fair point, and you're right. Now, I'll counter your point a little bit, just for the sake, you know, we're just having fun. What are your thoughts to this? This is my counter to that. And I'll relate this back to a financial terminology. So in the hedge fund business, we use a term called crowdedness, right? So the theory is that if every manager on the street is running the same strategy, it sucks all the alpha out of the venture, per se, right? So it's a very crowded trade, very crowded. It's called crowdedness. So for a person up and coming, let's say if you have an idea for a media company, you have an idea for a podcast, or even just whatever, right? It doesn't have to be a podcast. If you have an idea, where would you want to create that content on right now? Well, if it were me, I would probably be making a bet on Twitter, because this literally just, this whole new venture of long form video and podcasting on Twitter just came out literally 48 hours ago. So if you think about the algorithm, and if you think about the, how can I explain this? This is the Empire State Building, by the way. We'll let these guys pass. But if you think about the incentives, right, Think about Elon Musk. Think about the employees of Twitter. They're going to incentivize people to post content on the platform. So they're probably going to push out your content like crazy. They're probably going to push it like crazy, right? So let's say if you have no following on Twitter, you record a podcast about whatever. Let's say like Harry Potter. I don't know. I'm just using an example. You post it on Twitter. Twitter's probably going to push the hell out of that just because there's not a lot of content on the platform. So I think some creators will probably notice that and just start putting a lot of their time and effort into putting out content on Twitter because knowing it's going to be pushed. So in that aspect, maybe that gets around the argument where, Twitter doesn't have $200 million to pay somebody like Joe Rogan. That's true. But I think a lot of creators could see the opportunity to say, hey, if I create something on Twitter, I know that the algorithm's going to push it because there's just no content there right now. I don't know. Maybe it's true, maybe not. Hey, Robert, what's up, man? Good to see you. Long time no see. Sparks Carnival says, I think TikTok has an edge over Twitter. I personally, I can't stomach the fact, just the even thought of TikTok. I would never download that thing on my phone. But look, that's just me personally. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but just my opinion. Jack S. says, crowdedness is a really good point. I know a really popular Twitch streamer that say there's no way they would be popular if they started Twitch now, or things like that now. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I think it's just all about being an early adopter, right? And I try to talk about that on the stream. Oh, I thought that was the taxi cab doing that. That was so funny. So there was a yellow taxi, but there was like a sports car driving so close to it that you couldn't even see it. So I was like, what did they deck out the taxi cab in some sort of crazy engine? Anyway, I hate loud vehicles, not to be a buzzkill, but I just can't stand it. I think it's a little bit corny. But many people would say I'm corny, and I understand that too. But yeah, a lot of interesting things to think about. I think that there's just so much opportunity out there, and I'm excited about it. Garrison, let's see what Garrison says. Garrison says Facebook pushes new posts as well for the same reason, so that there is enough content on the platform. Sparks Carnival says, one of my favorite Chinese, hold on. Let me go back to Sparks Carnival's comment. So Sparks Carnival says, one of my favorite Chinese stocks right now is NIU, maker of electric scooters. Their fast-growing global demand for electric scooters, and NIU is emerging in the TML. Interesting. I'll take a screenshot of that and look into it. Hey, Steph UH is here. Says, hey, Tom and team. What's up, Steph? Thank you for joining us on this late night stream. We started late, started about 30 minutes late, but hey, Troy Atman is here. I'll try to get to everybody's comment. All right, let me pull off to the side so I can catch up on some comments. Yeah, I think just trying to skim over some comments. Yes, Smee says, I've met some great people on Twitter, people with like interests. I agree on that too. If you're in business especially in finance or in real estate. I think if you're not on Twitter, you're really, really missing out on some pretty big networking opportunities. And you don't even have to have a very big audience to benefit from it, right? I think the platform, I think the social media platform that gives more value to the I would say the consumers than takes away, right? I think on a platform like Facebook, you are pretty much the product. I think if you use Twitter the right way, especially if you hang around like financial Twitter, real estate Twitter, there's a lot of big players on there that are willing to, answer a DM, meet up in the city somewhere for coffee or for dinner. I've done deals over Twitter. I've closed deals over Twitter, which is just wild. I've been able to meet some amazing people on Twitter. The big venture I'm working on right now was in large part due to just being on Twitter and networking and sharing my ideas and essentially cold DMing people deals on the market. So I would definitely get on Twitter if you are not on there already. This is the Residence Inn Marriott. Speaking of Marriott, the hospitality industry in general had a great quarter this earnings season, with Hyatt and Marriott both beating on the top and the bottom line. Now, I have a friend, I told you guys this, I have a friend who actually works at the Park Hyatt, which is located in 157. And even the week after the Met Gala, even the week after the big Tiffany opening, right? Because LVMH acquired Tiffany, and one of the main things after the acquisition was we're going to totally redo the Fifth Avenue flagship Tiffany store. So the grand opening was about 2 weeks ago. But last week, the Park Hyatt was actually overbooked to the point where they had to pay other hotels to take guests. So they had to remove their guests from the rooms to make room for others, and get in touch with other five-star luxury hotels because there was an overwhelming amount of demand and rooms that were double booked. All while pretty much every single mainstream media outlet headline is recession fears. Like, that is, if you turn on CNBC, it's all about recession fears. All while we have probably some of the strongest demand for hospitality in terms of services and business we've ever had in this country, which is a little bit wild. But again, I think that plays into that sort of plays into our argument or our thesis that we're sort of having a very lopsided economic recovery since the great financial crisis, where all of the wealth has been accumulated to the top, arguably 10% of Americans, and everybody else is not doing as well. So I think you're having a big bull market in luxury, especially luxury hospitality. We always end the show with, there's always a bull market somewhere. You just need to know where to look. Look at some of the biggest luxury brand stocks. Look at LVMH. Look at a lot of the hospitality companies. People are out spending. Yeah, Sparks Carnival says LVMH is up 27.68% year to date. Hey, NNB 045, good to see you. All right, NNB 045, what do you think of this shot of the Empire State Building? Look at all the smoke coming off the Empire, amazing. 45 says Tom, those pushing the recession fears want interest rates to go down so asset prices bubble up again. It's a very good point, actually. It's a very good point. Yeah, rest in peace, Sam Zell. That is, yeah, we speaking of real estate, we lost an amazing real estate legend the other day. Sam Zell, I believe, passed away unfortunately on Thursday, it was. And really, really sad. Really, really sad. Now, if you don't know the story of Sam Zell, maybe you could take a few hours over the weekend to really research his story. It's really unbelievable what he built with the resources he had in the time he had. Amazing investor and amazing contrarian as well. And he also has a lot of history with Stephen Schwartzman. Now, I won't give it away because it's such a good story. But you could there's tons of documentaries now on YouTube. You could probably everybody's watching it now that he passed away. But yeah, I mean, Sam Zell did not. Well, I won't give it away because it's. I want you guys to watch the documentary. It's really good. I think you would enjoy the part where Sam Zell is doing a lot of negotiations with Stephen Schwartzman. He was going to sell his entire business to Stephen Schwartzman, which, as we know, Stephen Schwartzman really made a lot of his money, or I should say the lion's share of it, in leverage buyout deals. This is probably one of my favorite shots of the Empire. From Broadway, 1333 Broadway to be exact. Unbelievable shot. Hey, TPAC 5000 says, evening, what do you think about the lawn place for the future bail-ins? I don't know. I'm unfamiliar. What is the lawn place for future bail-ins? What's your take on it? Because I'm not too familiar. Yeah, Ryan Beck's his big contrarian trader. Mr. Bubbles says almost half of New York City hotel rooms are filled with illegal migrants. That is true as well. There's a really, I think no matter what side of the aisle you're on, there's like a humanitarian crisis at the border. And I think that should be our country's main focus. Because it's not safe for the migrants either. I mean, you know, I was reading the Wall Street Journal article about it, and these people are coming here for a better life with their small children. Some of them traveling alone, by the way. I mean, could you imagine being, you know, a 20-something-year-old mother, you know, traveling thousands and thousands of miles with your young child to the border, crossing the Rio Grande? It's just a horrible situation. I mean, I'm not going to go into it, but use your imagination with what those migrants go through just trying to get here. I mean, it's so dangerous, and you know, you got to sort of send a strong message, or people are going to make a really gruesome journey, and it's horrible. It's kind of depressing thinking about, but. So here we are at Herald Square. We are at the Macy's, the largest department store in the world. We'll probably make a right on 34th Street, head to Penn Station. We'll make a right here.
Tell me what kind of thing to bring.
Oh, I think there must be a concert getting out. You know, another thing that we got to talk about next week has to do with the pharmaceutical industry. It's a particular weight loss drug that is very controversial. I'm sure you guys already know what stock I'm talking about before I even say the name. But somebody sent me a really interesting research piece the other day that I'd like to go through and discuss. We'll talk about the potential legalities of it, but we'll also talk about the big picture, the total addressable market, or the TAM, that this drug addresses. Got the FDNY coming through. Hey, Gina Thomas, you're right. There we go, Ozempic. Gina Thomas, thank you for joining us on this very wet and misty night in New York. But the good news is the rain is going away, thank God. It will be out of here tomorrow. You know what, team? You know what we're gonna do? Since it's Saturday, okay, I want to take you guys underground into the underworld in New York City, into the belly of the beast, as they call it. Penn Station. Big stuff. Now, the internet is horrible. It's egregious down there. But I think we're going to try it out anyway. I really want to show you guys what it's like underground in New York. And hopefully, if we stay connected, I'll show you how to get from the old Penn Station, right, which is right here, to the brand new Moynihan Train Hall underground. Now, the internet is probably not going to hold up, but for the off chance that it does, I think it's going to be really cool for you guys to see the transition, because it's about 90% done. There's about 10% of the walkway that is all of the original, really disgusting old 60s and 70s Penn Station. So this walk will be able to sort of see in real time the transition from the old to the new. So let me cross here. So we'll cross 7th, and then we'll cross southbound on 34th, and I'll take you guys underground. We'll check it out. Yeah, Vivian says it was awful in the 1980s. Now, I remember as a kid coming to Penn Station, it looks totally different. It doesn't even look recognizable at all. There used to be a KFC down there. There used to be a Taco Bell. There just used to be so much stuff, but the ceiling height was so low that it was so claustrophobic in there, and it was so dirty. So we'll see the difference now. This is the main iconic view of the Empire State Building as you come off the Long Island Railroad here. Hey, Hasib is joining from Guyana. What's up? Thank you, Hasib. Hopefully you're well. Big international audience tonight. Good to see everybody from Guyana. So this is 7th Avenue, 34th Street. Joel PM says I'm quite fond of the old subway tiles. Yeah, but I mean, dude, Penn Station was like no good in my view. All right, let's just dive right in. We'll go into the belly of the beast. Let me turn off my Wi-Fi. Hopefully that'll improve the internet connection down here, and we'll see. Hold on. All right, I'm going to be keeping my eye on the chat. If we start to buffer, just hammer the chat that we're buffering. But I'll try to give a quick description. This is the original entrance to the Long Island Railroad. Right here. Sparks Carnival. I wanted to talk about Disney with you guys too. All right. So notice how dated the tiles are here. I guess you can maybe even call it a backsplash. Notice how low the ceilings are here. So this is the original, I would say the original Penn Station. You know what, actually, this is the ceilings. And as you make a right, hopefully if we don't buffer, you'll see an amazing transformation. All right, it says it's still buffering, which is unfortunate because I think it'd be kind of cool to show you guys this. Hey, Jenny Trickets is, are you headed to Long Island? We are. So my phone says we're buffering, but I'm not sure if it's fixed or not. But if you guys can see, this is the brand new Penn Station. You have all the interesting ceiling tiles here. But all the way down here to your right are going to be all sort of shops. Right, there's going to be restaurants, bars and grills, all on the right side here. So this is good for context here. You see where it says track 2021? The ceiling, really nice. So what I want to do is I want to take you guys all the way down and under the underpass, and we'll come out on the other side on the Moynihan train hall. You know what? This is exactly what it used to be like. So this is what it used to be like. For those of you who've never been in Penn Station, the Long Island Railroad, this is it. So this was the old Long Island Railroad. The ceiling is so low I could literally touch it. You know, if you're a 6'8" basketball player, you literally have to duck in here. Horrible, horrible design. And then you emerge into this, which I think they did a really good job. Everything's modern. It feels lighter in here. I feel like I could breathe. But I think this was money well spent. And this is the access to One Penn Plaza right here. But this is the ultimate test. As you go all the way down here, this is the path, the entranceway to the Moynihan train hall. And as we come out on the other side and go up the escalator, you'll be able to see the brand new train station. You could also get the ACE train upper downtown. On the other side of Penn Station where we just came from, you could get the red line, 1, 2, 3. Notice how low the ceiling is. Notice how disgusting everything is. Hey, Plains and Palm Trees. Hey, Tom, good to see you streaming again in New York City. Thank you so much. It's good to be back. Thank you for your very kind donation. So here's the transition for some exercise. I'm surprised the internet held up. Here we are. This is brand new. Now we usually see the train hall from upstairs. Now no longer. We have Governor Kathy Hochul. But guys, I think we'll end it here. I appreciate you guys joining us tonight for this Saturday night live stream. I know it's been buffering again, but I think this is a good end. So guys, thank you for joining. We will be back.